my name is Jordan and I am a product scientist at CriticalPath. This video will share some of our tips and tricks for finding insights and optimization opportunities within your app using CriticalPath. Starting off with trace recording, we recommend selecting a user flow from your app. A user flow consists of an action done by a user in the app and the resulting reaction in the app, such as a page loading in response to a user selecting an icon for a navigation bar, for example. Let's say you wanted to investigate your app launch. This user flow would be to launch the app and then to wait for the home screen or the login screen to load. So that's just an example of some user flows. The reason that we have a user flow in mind when recording a trace file is that when you record your trace file, you want to know exactly what actions you need to take in the app, and you don't want to have a ton of extra actions and resulting processes adding unnecessary noise to your trace file. We also recommend that trace files are no more than 15 seconds long for easier analysis and to avoid long processing times. However, you can record a trace file for as long as you want while you're interacting with your app. After uploading your trace file, it is a good idea to then use our flag feature to mark the beginning and end of the area of the trace that you want to analyze. So for example, here I have this trace file and I'm really only interested in when the user taps the show pop-up icon and the pop-up appears. So I already have these flags placed, but I'll show you how to place them, for example. So I placed a flag at the beginning of the flow, right when the user taps the show pop-up icon, which we see on the video. And then I put another flag at the end of the flow once the animation completes to show the pop-up icon. I'll delete this flag just to show how to add it. To add a flag, you hover in the region right below the timeline. And then once you have the flag where you want it, you just click to place it. And you can also name the flag. I'll name this end just because this is the end of the flow. And I'll actually go back and select the previous flag and name this beginning because this is the beginning of the flow. And as you can see here, our video feature also helps to figure out the area of interest within your trace that you would want to analyze. In addition to using flags to mark the beginning and end of your user flow or area of interest on the trace file, flags can also be used to annotate your trace file and highlight any important slices. It doesn't just have to be beginning or end. There is no limit to the number of flags that you can place. And if you do end up placing a lot of flags, if you tap H on your keyboard, it will hide some of the flag details. That way you're still able to read your trace file. Some tips regarding the main execution path. And if you want to know more details about the main execution path, we have a separate video dedicated to it on our site. But as a reminder, selecting the choreographer slice at the end of your flow, which is usually the choreographer slice that corresponds to the frame number of the last UI update of the flow, will reveal the main execution path for a user flow. So for instance, I see that the pop-up title is loaded at this point, and we're right around frame 222, 223. So if I select this choreographer, I see that this choreographer also has frame 223, but by selecting this choreographer, which is at the end of the flow, that will reveal the execution path back to the beginning of the flow where the user action occurred. Now that we see the execution path, I'll call out some things to look out for. The first being delays in the execution path highlighted in red. So I'm sure you see that here. There are various areas of the trace file highlighted in red once the execution path is selected. And areas highlighted in red on the trace means that a function in the execution path is waiting in the queue for another function to finish before it can execute. And when this happens, even in the case where waiting is necessary, the tool will highlight this area in red. So this means that when an area on the trace file is highlighted in red, it should be taken as something to look into, but it does not necessarily indicate a performance issue. Another thing to look out for on the trace are network requests. For starters, you want to make sure that the network requests that you expect to see in your flow are part of your main execution path. If it's not, then we recommend using the path hinting tool if a choreographer slice is selected to search through some of the other path options if the network request that you expect to see is not there in the first main execution path. Additionally, one thing to look out for is how network requests are scheduled and prioritized. For example, waiting until the last minute to fetch data can create a delay. Scheduling network requests to execute sequentially rather than in parallel if they are independent could create a necessary delay. And those are just some common insights that we find when we are analyzing various mobile apps. And the last thing to look out for when analyzing your trace and execution path is unexpected behavior, such as repetitive patterns. For example, repeatedly fetching a token instead of caching the information, or triggering an unnecessary view model update. Those are some other examples of insights that we have diagnosed and remedied using CriticalPath. So those are just some things to generally look out for when you are analyzing your app using CriticalPath. That concludes this video. Enjoy using CriticalPath to find performance optimization opportunities within your app.